Hello and welcome to a presentation specifically for the International Association of Emergency Managers Canada, Alberta region. I am thrilled to be here with you during Emergency Preparedness Week 2021 to share some insights on crisis and risk communications. If you don't know me and we have not met yet, my name is Ben Morgan, and I can be reached by email at bmorgan@crisiscomms.ca or by visiting my website at centerforcrisiscommunications.com. I am a crisis communications public relations guy. I actually spent the first 16 years of my career as an advanced life support paramedic throughout the province of Alberta, and did a career change into crisis communications just by happenstance when I received a job offer by the city of Calgary in March of 2013. The job offer was supervisor of crisis communications. I worked for the corporate communications department and very closely with an amazing man that you likely all know, retired Chief Tom Sampson from the Calgary Emergency Management Agency. I held leadership roles for communications during the 2013 Calgary floods, and through my participation in Canada Task Force 2 was in Fort McMurray during the Fort McMurray fires in 2016. I also managed the communications during 2014 snow timber in Calgary and the 2015 underground vault fire downtown Calgary that knocked out power to the west side of the downtown core for several days. I then moved on into more of an issues management role, took on more public relations accountabilities. I started teaching as associate faculty at the Royal Roads University in Victoria. I teach in the Master of Arts of Disaster and Emergency Management. And a few years ago, I left full-time employment and started my own consultation shop with a mentor of mine named Dr. Vincent Cavello. Speaking of Dr. Vincent Cavello, the first Thursday of every month, I host a virtual event called Crisis and Coffee, the first Thursday of every month at noon Mountain Time. Sometimes we just have casual conversation, and sometimes we have special guests. Thursday, May 6, 2021, Dr. Vincent Cavello will be joining us as our special guest. If you don't know of Vincent Cavello, he is arguably one of two of the founding godfathers, as I call him, of crisis and risk communications as a science-based discipline. He is the world-leading expert in this space and has been in the Congo with Wisteria, with Ebola in Africa, with Mayor Rudolph Giuliani during 9/11. He was in Paris with the terror attacks at the nightclub. He's been at nuclear disaster events. He was in the Gulf during Horizon North. If you search Cavello and health, you will see his name. He's been involved in everything. And what's really neat about Dr. Cavello is he has a master's degree in neuroscience, and his PhD work is in communications. So he's actually put brain probes on people's brains and put them through MRI scanners, and he watches which parts of the brains are activated or which parts of the brain shut down during different types of messaging and different tones and different sequences. And so everything that we practice is based on Dr. Cavello's research. It's science-based and field-proven. Everything that I'm going to talk to you today about that has a scientific claim to it does belong to Dr. Cavello, and I use it with his permission. So I'm going to talk to you today about crisis and risk communications. Real briefly, some core fundamentals about crisis and risk communications, and then I'll share my 7 guiding principles in crisis and risk communications, and hope that maybe there's an aha for you in there, or one takeaway, or hey, you've just killed 20 minutes listening to this guy. You will hear me interchange the terminology crisis and risk communications with high stress, high concern. High stress, high concern communications comes from high stress, high concern environments. When something goes boom, people are highly stressed and highly concerned. When we're experiencing a pandemic, people are often highly stressed or highly concerned. The core principles of high stress, high concern situations do relate to crisis and risk communications, but they also translate to holding employee town halls when employees are stressed or concerned about new policies or heard rumors that there are going to be more layoffs. High stress, high concern environments can include coming home to your spouse who's got a significant issue with something you might have done. High stress, high concern communications work in a variety of different settings. I just want to say just for a moment, when I talk risk, issue, crisis, this is something you're all likely very familiar with, is that we work through, HIRA's hazard identification risk assessments. We identify key areas of risk. We put in risk mitigation plans to avoid things from becoming an issue. When we see an issue emerging, we respond to that to try to mitigate it, to avoid us having a crisis. But I also think it's important to highlight that these three things are so interchangeable. They're so intermixable. You can have risks inside of a crisis. You can have emerging issues inside of a crisis. You can, they're all connected and all moving and fluid. And so when we talk about definitions, it really can become obscure. And to me, what's more important than defining is when we're facing an event is what we're doing about it, how we're responding. If you think back to the Calgary floods, I think you would all agree the city of Calgary was in a crisis. We had several emerging issues. Take, for instance, a fully loaded CP rail train on a failing bridge over the Bow River. Any other day, it was Bruce Burrell said it to me. He said, Ben, any other day, we would have activated the OC. We would have been very methodical on how we remove the train off of this bridge. Today, I just want the train off the bridge. So in that moment, this train, which any other day could have been a potential crisis, in the bigger context of things, that train was an issue, and that issue needed to be resolved inside of the crisis. We also had lots of risks inside of the crisis. We allowed residents to return home before their homes were inspected. So that required a great deal of risk communication. What should residents look for when they go back into their houses? What should they do if they find something in their house that we've told them to look for? So there's a big mix and a big connection between risk, issue, and crisis, which is why I often will refer to risk and crisis communications, AKA high stress, high concern communications. So what we know from the science and the research about high stress, high concern communications is that to be successful in risk and crisis communications, we need to anticipate. That's your HIRA, anticipating, understanding your key areas of risk. We need to prepare. That's often having a plan. And we need to practice, exercise, tabletops, full scales, you name it. We know that to be successful, we need to anticipate, we need to prepare, and we need to practice. And then I always throw in the rinse and repeat, because that should be an ongoing process. We also know that in high stress, high concern situations, the rules of communication change, or the needs of communications change. I'll share that with you in a moment. Now, we do know through the work of Dr. Vincent Cavello and Dr. Sandman and emerging scholars like Dr. Timothy Coombs that high stress, high concern, crisis and risk communications is a science-based discipline. There is science to it. There is proven theories, there is proven principles, and field-tested tools to help us with our crisis and risk communications. We also know, and this is just setting some groundwork, that in low stress and low concern environments, so I feel like I'm currently sitting in a low stress, low concern environments. We know that the average, and my brain is average, the average human brain can remember and process up to 7 pieces of information. Up to 7 pieces of information is what the average human brain can remember and process in low stress, low concern environments. This is why when they first developed the phone and the phone system, before needing to worry about area codes, your phone number was 7 digits. Now you have to remember an area code, and I don't know about you, but I have more difficulty recalling a 10-digit phone number. We don't really need to recall it though anymore because it just sits in our phone book on our smartphone. There is research starting to emerge now that suggests that the average human brain can remember and process up to 5 bits of information. And that is due to the fact that we are so connected, we are so digitally focused, there is so much information, and we don't have to power our brain as much to get a phone number when we can just simply find the number we're looking for on our smartphone. We also know that in high stress and high concern environments, so I'm feeling really stressed, and when I'm feeling really concerned, we know that the average human brain can remember and process up to 3 pieces of information. So when I'm feeling highly stressed and highly concerned, and I need to call that magic number, North America, 911, other parts of Europe, 999, etc., that is based on the science of the human brain's ability to remember and process pieces of information, which in high stress, high concern environments is 3. We also know that, and these are very, speaking in generalities, by the way, we also know that when people are concerned or upset, they will often have difficulty hearing, remembering, and understanding information. They will have a difficulty hearing, understanding, and remembering information. They will also often most focused on what they hear first. We also know that they will typically want to know that you care before they care what you know. That's a great quote by Theodore Roosevelt. When people are stressed or concerned, they want to care that you know before they want to know that you care before they care what you know. It is important in high stress, high concern situations that your heart meets your head, and where possible, that you lead with empathy. We know that more often than not, effective crisis communications, effective risk communications begins with empathy. It's not always possible, but where possible, we should make an effort to lead our communications with empathy. So with that, I will share our 7 core principles of crisis and risk communications. Some of them may line up and resonate with you, and some of them may not. That's okay. Why did we choose 7 core principles? Because in high stress, high concern situations, the average human brain can remember and process up to 7 pieces of information. Principle number 1, in line with demonstrating and leading with empathy, is lead with empathy. We know that more often than not, if we don't lead with empathy, we risk losing up to 80% of our audience in the first minute or 2 of our communications. If we don't lead with empathy, we're at risk for losing up to 80% of our audience. This is right in line with trust determination theory, and the trust determination theory that really just says that only when trust and credibility is established between an audience and an organization, or an audience and a presenter, an audience and a spokesperson, that they will, only when that trust and credibility is established is when information will be relied upon. And trust determination factors include empathy, caring, dedication, commitment, competence, expertise, honesty, openness. And if you've ever seen any of Tom Sampson's media briefings and his words, he more often than not leads with empathy, care, dedication, commitment, and that helps with that trust between a man like him and his audience. Principle number 2 is know and seek to understand your audience. Don't just throw it out there. Really seek to understand who you're talking to. Who are you talking to? Where are they? What channels are they on? What do they want to know? Who should be speaking to them? How often do they need to hear from you? Etc. Really seek to understand your audience. We also know that the average grade level of comprehension in a typical audience is grade level 4. So when communicating, it's important when you're communicating to a broad audience that we work to bring down the scientific information, the high level, here's all of the science behind this stuff, or here's the engineering report, or whatever it is, that we bring that down to an average grade level of 4. It was interesting to me during the Calgary floods. We thought we were doing a great job. We had 1.1 million visits to our website in the first 24 hours. We had incredible social media engagement. And I took some time out one day and I went down to one of the most affluent parts of Calgary, right along the Elbow River. Lots of multi-million-dollar homes down there. And we had told Calgarians, tell us what you need. Tell us what you need from us. And they didn't tweet at us or fill out a form on our website or enter details into the 311 mobile app. They were ripping up pieces of cardboard, writing on it with a Sharpie, and taping it to the front window. And that was a big realization moment for me to say, hey, if that's how they're communicating to us in 2013, we're not doing a good job by thinking that we're engaging with the people who need the information the most by putting something out on Twitter. So really seek to understand who your audience is and where they are. Principle number 3, be clear, be concise. That's it. Let me say that again. Be clear and be concise. Be clear and be concise. And there's some tools that can help you strengthen and be concise with your messaging. I use what Dr. Cavallo calls a message map, and a message map builds 3 messages. And I can deliver those 3 messages in 9 seconds. And I can do that using about 27 words. Why 3 messages? Because in high stress, high concern situations, the average human brain can remember and process up to 3 bits of information. Why do I want to deliver that in 9 seconds? Because it's been proven that the average soundbite in a typical media story for a spokesperson is about 9 seconds. And why 27 words? I asked Dr. Cavallo, I said, why 27 words? And he said, because at 28 words, people start to tune you out. Which means you've likely tuned me out already. It's also important to stay in your lane. Be clear, be concise, and stay in your lane. Only speak to what is yours to speak about. Don't make assumptions. Don't make predictions. Don't speculate. Speak to what yours is to speak about. When I was the spokesperson for the City of Calgary Emergency Medical Services, we actually had to have a written agreement between the paramedics, the firefighters, and the police service stating, hey, I'll speak to my business, you speak to yours. And we had an agreement written that we wouldn't talk about each other's business, because that's when information starts to go wrong. An example, during the 3 Mile Island nuclear event, spokespeople from the nuclear plant had said, don't worry, there's actually more radiation under the Washington Monument than there is in the ground by our reactors. And although that may have been a nice visual for some people, Washington Monument saw a sudden decrease of visitors. They had people not come to visit them anymore because, somebody else was talking about their business. Stay in your lane. Core principle number 4, be accountable. If your organization screwed up, if you screwed up, if something was yours to own it. We are so connected digitally that if we don't own it, it's gonna come out anyways. And when it comes out through another channel, through another source, something is leaked, it's just gonna create more headache for you down the road anyways. Be accountable, take responsibility, but we can do it in a very strategic way. Be accountable. Principle number 5, be aware of the negatives and don't repeat them. So be aware of the negatives and don't repeat them. Mr. President, are you a crook? I am not a crook. What? You're a crook? Not a crook. That can be taken out of context. People have very selective hearing when they're highly stressed and highly concerned. Why? Because we know that when people are stressed or concerned, they will have difficulty hearing, remembering, and understanding. This is also tied in to the negative dominance theory. And the negative dominance theory really just says that when people are stressed out, they are likely to see most situations in their lives in a negative light. And communication efforts should avoid too many negative words so that greater value is not assigned to them. The more we use negative words, the greater value people will assign to them. So avoid repeating the negatives. There you go. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Okay, principle number 6, avoid using absolutes and be mindful when making promises. I audited a document. It was a communications plan, and the word ensure, E-N-S-U-R-E, was used 76 times. I bet you if you look at any one of your emergency response plans, business continuity plans, the word ensure is one of the most popular words in there. Unless you have a crystal ball, unless you can see into the future, we don't know what you can ensure. If we put this program into place, it will ensure that all employees are aware of the changes. Well, guess what? If one employee is not aware of that program, then you've failed. Set yourselves up for success. Simply reframe that by saying, if we put this program in place, it will enhance the employee's awareness of this new program. You can set a goal. You can set a target. We saw absolutes being used early on in the pandemic when people were talking about masks. Stop buying masks. They don't help. They are not effective in preventing general public from catching coronavirus. Yet here we find ourselves under mandatory mask restrictions and guidelines. Simply reframing that in a way that says something like, we believe at this time that wearing masks will not help prevent the spread of COVID-19. That creates space for down the road if things change to say something like, we care about you so much, we've done more research, and we now believe that the use of masks are very effective in helping to prevent the spread of COVID-19. I think it was pretty detrimental when Premier Kenney and our Prime Minister made hardcore promises about the vaccine. They made promises months ago about the vaccine, and we've seen Johnson & Johnson suspend. We've seen AstraZeneca issues. We've seen concerns about this. We've seen production issues. We've seen shipping problems. Making that promise comes right back to the trust and credibility. If I make that promise and I don't deliver, I've worn down my trust. I've worn down that credibility. Simply stating, we have a very ambitious goal, and that is to see every Canadian vaccinated by the end of June. That's our goal. That's our target. That's what we're driving for. Don't promise it. Don't guarantee it. because then you have to deliver. And if you don't deliver, then you're just waning down your credibility. So avoid absolutes and be very careful when making promises. Principle number 7, always be professional and respectful. Even if you're cringing, even if you're biting, even if you are just wanting to take the high road. There's a great video of a general from the American Army in Senate, and he's asked a ridiculous question by one of the senators, and this general just remains so calm, so clear, so respectful. It's an amazing piece. I'll try to dig it up and send it along with this presentation. Always be professional and respectful. We know through Edelman PR that 81% of people expect us to do the right thing. 81% of people expect your brand, your company, your organization to do the right thing. And if you hinge on professionalism and respect, then you're already setting yourself up for success. You lead that with empathy, and you're gonna do amazing. We have an expression around the Center for Crisis and Risk Communications that say, let your values be your North Star. So when in doubt, when you're having an issue or you don't know where you should be headed, should I do this, should I do that, align yourself with your values, because your values will demonstrate when you live by your values, you leave nothing to shine but your authentic self, and people will more often resonate and connect to authentic you. And when you're being authentic, you're more than likely in a place where you're leading with empathy, you're being professional, and you're being respectful. That's all about I got for you. That is my 25, 30 minutes. Just very grateful for the opportunity to share with you our core principles for crisis and risk communications, to share with you how crisis and risk communications change in high stress, high concern environments, and a couple of tricks on how you might want to approach things. Should you have any interest in reaching out and connecting, we do coaching, communication coaching. On our website, there's a resources page full of resources. Invite you to attend Crisis and Coffee on May 6th with Dr. Cavello. If you go to our website, resources, and then navigate down to Crisis and Coffee, all the details are there. Yeah, and one more note to say, thank you. Thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for all that you continue to do. I know through several of my friends and colleagues that your role, emergency management or wherever you are, whatever you're doing, has been really difficult this last year, and probably unrecognized in many ways. So from me to you, from our shop to yours, thanks for the work that you do. Thanks for being you, and thanks for tuning in to this snippet of high stress, high concern communications.